Hey there guys, welcome back to Ripped Apart, a sadly continuing saga. Here you will hear the stories where the OP is alienated and literally forced to continue life with less family. Obviously, I will not give a name or a specific location. Just to make everyone aware, we are now taking in stories from the USA, and social services in the States are called CPS, or Child Protective Services, just so you know. Let's get into it. In the UK in 2021, in a quiet town in the UK, a family faced an unexpected battle. Their young grandchild, a 2-year-old with learning difficulties, had been taken into care by social services. The child's grandparents, both in their 40s and 50s, had the space and love needed to care for the little one. They had clean, enhanced DBS certificates, a stable home, and a deep commitment to keeping their grandchild within the family. Yet, despite all this, they encountered relentless opposition from the authorities. When they applied to become special guardians, hoping to bring their grandchild back home, they were met with a shocking assessment from Children's Services. The report was filled with inaccuracies and false claims, seemingly designed to discredit them as suitable caregivers. Undeterred, they decided to fight these fabrications in court, determined to expose the truth. During this arduous process, a pivotal moment occurred in a vital meeting held over Teams. The social worker assigned to their case made a bigoted remark towards Scottish people. The other two social workers present laughed at the comment, treating it as a joke. The grandparents, appalled by the prejudice displayed by the professionals responsible for the grandchild's welfare, immediately filed a formal complaint with the local authority. However, the response they received was disheartening. All three social workers involved denied recalling the comment, effectively dismissing the complaint. Despite this, the grandparents persisted, knowing that their actions were in defense of their grandchild's rights and well-being. In court, the truth was finally revealed when the social worker admitted to making the discriminatory remark. But instead of holding the social worker accountable, the local authority and the judge turned their scrutiny on the grandparents. The argument was made that because they had filed a complaint, they might be difficult to work with in the future if they were granted guardianship. The judge echoed these concerns, suggesting that the couple's willingness to report misconduct could create ongoing tension. The decision was a bitter blow. The family had done everything right, standing up against prejudice and uncovering a cover-up, yet they were being punished for it. The social worker faced no real consequences, while the grandparents were painted as uncooperative, casting doubt on their suitability to care for their grandchild. As they left the courtroom, their resolve remained unshaken. They had fought for what was right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Their love for their grandchild was unwavering, and they vowed to continue the fight until the child was back where they belonged, surrounded by family, love, and support. The road ahead was definitely uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would never stop fighting for their family. In this case, we hear of social services taking a child and that child's grandparents standing tall and not accepting the fabrication social services created. Through it all, the grandparents battle a system designed to protect yet It seems social services are determined to keep the child away from their family. You probably won't be surprised to hear that social services didn't help in any way. Same as usual, invade, take, leave. In the UK in 2019, specifics like gender for this one have been removed at the OP's request. One day the child returned home from a visit with the other parent in pain, unable to go to the toilet. For 6 months they sought help from doctors, desperate to understand what was wrong. But no answers came. One morning they gently asked the child if the other parent had hurt them, and the child nodded, indicating yes. When asked where the pain was, the child pointed to their private area and behind. Concerned, they confronted the other parent immediately, who reacted with anger and screaming. Fearing for the child's safety, they decided that the future visits would only happen at their home, under supervision. On one such visit, while they were in the kitchen preparing lunch, the child later confided that the other parent had hurt them again. Terrified, they contacted the police. 2 days later, the child was examined, but no physical evidence of abuse was found. Social services became involved, and soon, so did the rest of the family. Unfortunately, the family sided with the other parent, turning the situation into a nightmare of accusations and mistrust. Under pressure from social services, they were coerced into undergoing a psychological evaluation. After just an hour, the doctor diagnosed them and insisted on medication. Meanwhile, the other parent began legal proceedings, and despite the troubling allegations, a judge granted regular visitation for every weekend. As the visits continued, the child's behavior worsened, and the abuse seemed to escalate. Social services then issued a devastating threat: either comply or risk losing the child altogether. Desperate to protect the child, they made the heart-rending decision to flee to their home country, hoping to keep the child safe. However, their efforts were in vain when their own family disclosed their location to the authorities. They were forced to return, and over the last 4 years they have been allowed 60 hours of contact with the child, which works out to a total of just 2.5 days over 4 years. 2.5 out of nearly 1,500. Despite clear signs of the child's deteriorating behavior, the blame was placed squarely on them. Now back in court, they hold on to the hope that justice will prevail, and they will be reunited with their child. The journey has been long and fraught with pain, but their determination to protect and be with their child remains unshaken. In this case, OP noticed their child had possibly been sexually victimized, and in trying to get justice for that, they had been punished, and felt the need to flee their home only to be victimized themselves by the very family they are part of. In this case, social services got involved, but all they managed to do was rip a family to pieces. Now please remember that CPS is Child Protective Services, the US's equivalent of social services. In the USA in 2023, the weight of the past 2 years was crushing, yet the parent refused to give up. It all began when their ex-partner closely connected with a CPS worker. started spinning falsehoods. The goal was clear: take the children away, but the plan backfired in a way no one could have imagined. The children, instead of being placed with their ex, were scattered into foster homes, where life grew darker and darker for them. From the start, the parent had suspected something sinister. Each court hearing deepened the frustration. At one critical hearing in early December, the parent laid it all bare for the judge: the fabricated lies, the connections within CPS, and the blatant bias of the case supervisor, who was the ex's former boss. The judge's response was chilling in its simplicity. I know. Despite acknowledging the manipulation, she upheld the removal order. The case seemed to spiral into a labyrinth of corruption. Over time, the parent was assigned 6 different caseworkers and cycled through 7 lawyers. Yet the same names kept surfacing: people aiding the ex and shielding one another. The parent meticulously documented everything, filling 4 notebooks with names, incidents, and evidence, desperate to expose the truth. But the nightmare didn't stop at systemic corruption. The foster homes where the children were placed revealed horrors no parent should ever have to endure. Reports of abuse, both physical and emotional, were met with silence. Even worse, during supervised visits, the supervisor tasked with overseeing the children had crossed unforgivable lines. 2 of the children witnessed him putting his hands on their sibling. One child's face bore the evidence, a mark so undeniable that the parent captured it in a photo. The supervisor's behavior didn't stop there. He attempted to bribe one of the children into silence, and that failed. Another scratch appeared on the youngest child's face. Despite multiple reports, no action was taken. The same supervisor continued overseeing visits, his presence a constant source of fear and distress. For 2 long years, the parent fought to bring the story to light. They weren't just battling for their children, they were battling against a system that seemed designed to protect itself. No matter the cost to the innocent lives it was meant to serve, every day was a fight for justice, a plea for someone to listen, and a determination to uncover the truth. And yet, despite the odds, the parent pressed on. They would not stop until the children were safe, and the web of lies was unraveled for all to see. In this case, we hear of a parent battling to keep their family together despite the actions of CPS. The children, instead of being placed with family, were instead scattered across foster homes and divided. In this particular case, it seems the services once again, there to protect children and keep families together, did nothing to actually help. And the family was divided anyway. This is the first story we have from the States, but unfortunately the result is exactly the same. Invade, take, leave. It appears the folks in the US may have a different currency, but even across the pond, we all have one common enemy. These stories are all from real people going through real issues, And the unfortunate thing is, after a family is ripped apart, the parents are left with less family and the pieces to pick up anyway. They can scream and moan all they like, but the only ones that listen are those that have lived it. And those that have lived it can only say things like, it gets better. The really sad part is nobody wants it to get better. They need it to be better. They need their children to be better. That is everything from me for now, but rest assured this will not be the last story of a mother or father feeling and being ripped apart. See the description for the way to send me your story. And a massive thank you to the folks in the US who have decided to start sharing their stories.